Hello and thank you for joining me today. Today I'm sharing with you a whale that I altered using Prima's Surfboard collection. I started by sketching out a whale. Next I had my husband cut it out and drill a tiny hole in the top. After that I spray painted it with some gesso and brought in the Prima collection. This is the sheet that I chose for my base. And next you'll see me adhere it with some gel medium. Now this video is sped up quite a bit because it's a very detailed and kind of large project, but hopefully you'll get the gist of it, and if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below and I'll be happy to answer them. So once I got my paper in place, I did have to piece it together a little bit because he was a little bit bigger than 12 inches. Once it was dry and smooth, I went ahead and sanded my edges to make sure there was no overhang. There's a tiny bit, but you don't really see it. Next, I wanted my paper to be able to handle all the medium that I was going to add to it. So I went ahead and added a coat of clear gesso. And again, this is sped up quite a bit, so you won't have to watch me paint this. Also, between each layer, I did let it dry. So it did take a while. I did this project over some time. Now I wanted to go ahead and start building some texture. So I went ahead and used Prima's plaster paste, and I'm just using this through one of Finn's stencils. I believe it's called Swirly Florals. But again, all my products will be listed down below. And I didn't put this texture everywhere, but almost everywhere. So you'll see me go ahead and finish this up, and then I'll clean up the edges just a little tiny bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and smooth it out because I don't want any real distinct cutoffs where the pattern is. So I'm just dragging that paste a little bit and making it look a little more natural. To continue with the texture, I went ahead and added Finnabair's white crackle paste. See? This is one of my all-time favorites, and I use it as much as I can and on a lot of things. But I'm just using a paintbrush and I'm dabbing it around wherever I wanted to add a little bit more texture. Now for this paste, I do let it air dry because the cracks just seem to work out better for me. That's just my preference. I don't know if that's like the rule or something, but for me, that's how it works. So once I got this paste where I wanted it, I walked away. Next, I started to use some Jade Impasto paint. Now I watered this down quite a bit, and then you're going to see me add even more water. This paint is so heavily pigmented, it's fine, trust me. And then I still tone it down after this. But I'm just making it flow around the whale and get in all those little details that I added with all the texture. So I'm going to paint a little watered down paint on, add a little bit of water, and then dab it off. And then after I get the paint the way that I want it, I do dry it with a heat tool, but I didn't make you watch that because who needs to see paint dry, right? Continuing to add color. And once I had my color in place, I decided that he was actually just a little too dark for my preference. So I went ahead and brought out some heavy white gesso, and I'm going to dry brush this onto the detail. So I'm careful not to cover too much up, but this moves quite quickly. As you can see, I sped this up quite a bit so you wouldn't have to watch too much. But I'm really just trying to bring out that detail that I took the time to make that I lost with the color. So you'll see me do that here. And I continue dry brushing across the entire whale, and I'm using my hand as a palette, and I'm just kind of wiping off a little bit of gesso and very lightly going across the whale. So from head to tail, he gets a little bit of a whitewash. Almost done. I might have gone over it another time with a second coat, but I didn't see any point in making you go through that. Next, it was time to add a quick coat of white pearl paint to my embellishments and a couple little resin pieces that I knew I was going to need to build up my cluster. These chipboards are from Renee Bouquets, and some of them have been cut in half, but you get the idea. So I'm just using a little foam brush, placing some paint, and then I'm going to set them aside to dry. Next, you'll see I'm starting to build my focal point. I'm looking at it from this angle because when he sits up on his fin, he kind of balances back on his tail. So my focal point has to be at a weird angle. So from the camera down, it looks off, but when he's sitting the way he's going to be, it's right. So you can see I used a little tile to place the sticker on top of the resin heart, and that's where my focal point is. It says Big Waves. So now I'm placing some resin pieces to start building up my cluster. You're going to see me use some fussy cut shells out of another sheet from the collection. And I'm just going to start placing things. Now this part of the video does drag quite a bit. I did try to speed this up, but there's a lot of flowers and it's a little choppy and it's moving quite quickly. But I wanted you to see my placement and my process and me ripping things apart and moving them around. And while you don't see everything, you can see that a lot went into trying to build this cluster. So while I'm going to make you watch me place all these flowers, I thought I would ask you to please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. I am trying to grow my numbers. So I'm continuing to play with flowers while you're clicking the thumbs up and subscribe, hopefully. I do greatly appreciate it. And again, any comments or questions, I'm happy to answer. So anyways, you can see I'm continuing to place some fussy cut images, the shells out of the collection. They were so beautiful, and there's a whole sheet of it. It's gorgeous, and they were easy to cut too, so that was always a bonus. Anyhow, I'm building up my second cluster at the top of the tail, and you'll see I kind of move that to the center. He was really kind of difficult to figure out where my cluster should be because, you know, he's an odd shape, so the balance on this project was a little difficult for me. So it did take a while, and I moved things around quite a bit. And I may have covered a little too much of him with flowers, but I really loved playing with them. I'm quite the flower addict, if you know me. And I don't use them as often as I would like. But this collection, I think I used like 3 or 4 packs. Anyways, I'm starting to finally be happy with the placement of everything. So next I'm going to go ahead and start adding in the fine details. You'll see me adding in the chipboard pieces. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in some art stones. Now for my art stones, honestly, I'm kind of running low on my gel medium. So I used this gel paste that I have, and I've had it forever. And it has kind of like a glitter in it. And I figured because he's a whale and he's in the water, it would be okay. But because it's a gel and it dries clear, I knew that my art stones would adhere. And so you're just going to see me continue to add gel, sprinkle some art stones. I'm trying desperately not to mix my art stones into the gel like I typically do because this is a glitter paste and I don't want to ruin it because it actually does turn out really pretty. But moving on, once I'm happy with all my art stones, I'm going to go ahead and add in some tiny details. So you'll see me go ahead and start gluing in some tiny teal beads from Renee's Bouquet and some tiny little chipboard hearts. And here I am doing that with some glossy accents. And unfortunately you can't really tell what I'm doing because the camera angle, but they're so tiny. It's all the little touches that you'll see in the final pictures. And I do some things off camera too that I realized I didn't do until it was done. For example, I add some micro beads to my flowers and just a little bit of glitter. And it's all those little extra touches that make a project stand out. But sometimes on camera, you just don't see it because they're so tiny, and the angle coming down. So sorry about that. But right now you'll see that I'm painting my tiny little chipboard hearts with some Sparks paint. I believe it's Mermaid Sparkle. But again, all the products that I use will be listed down below. And then after I'm done painting the hearts, I decide I want to add a little bit more of that Mermaid Sparkle. So I just take my brush and just twist it and drag it. And it kind of makes it look like it's water, and it's so incredibly sparkly. It's the perfect little touch. Now you're going to see me paint the center of that focal flower. It's because it was a white matte finish and I wanted it to be the pearl white. That's my OCD kicking in. And once I had the white pearl out again, I decided I had to add some splatters. So I covered up my little title, Big Waves, and splattered away. And that really wraps up the project, except for the little resin piece that I added at the top, and that's why my husband drilled the hole for me. So after a little bit of gel medium in there, you're going to see the resin piece added, and that's it. Here's my little happy whale. He's been in my head for a while, and I'm glad I finally got to make him. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel and giving me a thumbs up. Again, I greatly appreciate you spending your time with me. Thank you so much, and you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.